Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets. Now here are your hosts, Tim McMaster and Connor Hughes. Listen safely.
Can't wait.
There's a lot of hungry guys that want to go out there and just prove a lot of people wrong, frankly. And so, I'm excited for this week of practice. I'm excited for the season, and I'm excited about these group of guys we have going up to Buffalo this weekend. I can tell you that there's some guys on this team that may not be household names, but they're good football players. Their mission is to go out and become a household name.
Welcome into the Can't Wait podcast, where our mission is also to become a household name. Tim McMaster here, along with Connor Hughes and Marissa Morris. We're getting there, but you can help us out. Give us a great rating wherever you're listening to the podcast, and subscribe as well. Lots to get to on the podcast, as it is a game week for the New York Jets. Buffalo Bills, of course, coming up on Sunday. We're going to talk about expectations for the 2020 season. We're going to talk about the roster and how it broke down with some interesting choices along the way. But for the most part, they kind of went with what we expected, and a division preview as well. But before we get to all of that, there's something we got to talk about, Connor, and that is you going golfing, which is something you do frequently.
Yeah, I got a tee time today.
With you. You brought your own heckler. Let's talk about this a little bit.
It's funny because like I've casually my one friend's one of my best friends' wife is a extremely athletic person, and he's brought her golfing before. So she and Bree are very, very close, and obviously I'm very close with my buddy Rodney. So we've briefly mentioned the subject before of like, why don't we bring Bree and Corinne golfing? And then also I golf all the time with my father-in-law, so I've kind of said like multiple times like, oh, why don't we bring like Bree and Bree's mom golfing with me and Bree's father-in-law? I was like, that would kind of be like a lot of fun, like, look, I don't know how much they're going to play or whatever, but like, I don't, maybe they will or they won't. So finally, like I kind of made reference to bringing Bree out on the course before. And she's kind of always said like, no, like, I don't know how to play. I don't have anything to wear, like that kind of thing. I was like, oh, look, I was like, all you need is like shorts and like a tank top. I was like, you can make it work. I was like, and you don't have to play, just ride in the cart, have some drinks, listen to country music, and like just enjoy being outside. If it's like, she's not going to want to come when it's like a 200-degree day, but if it's like 75, 80, like what else are you going to do? So I've like made the comment a couple of times. It's always been like, maybe, no, I'm fine. I'm going to do something else. Maybe, no, I'm fine. I'm going to do something else, like that kind of thing. So this past weekend, I scheduled a tea time with my father-in-law, and I casually said like, Bree, would you want to come out and play with us? Like, is this like, would you want to like come out and join it? And she like almost right off the bat was like, yeah, sure. Fine. And it kind of like caught me off guard, because I was like, all right, I'm scheduling a 2:00 tea time at some random course. Doesn't really matter. And then she was like, yeah, I'll come. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. If Bree wants to come, we're going to do like, I'm going to try to take her to a nice course. Like we'll get a nice tea time, nice course, have her get to see like scenery and like what this is like, and like pretty greens and all, like kind of like give her a good first course experience, not some just like rinky dink municipal. Why can't I speak municipal today? This is why we should have started with this. Is why this is a bad idea to do the podcast. This is why my idea was bad to do the podcast 8 in the morning. I can't even speak yet.
This was like your suggestion. Everybody should know.
Yeah. So first hole, like we get to the course, Bree, like we pack up the cooler. We've got it in the back. Bree's excited. She looks cute. She's got like the golf outfit on, all that stuff. I'm like, man, this is going to be try to fun. I'm already like getting like all macho though, because now I'm like, I got to impress Bree. Like, minus the fact we've been dating each other for 11 years, we're engaged to be married. Like, there's clearly not going to be an after Bree. I'm like, I have to impress her. I have to impress Bree. So of course, like my first drive like of the day on the first hole, like we call it a bright. Like I don't take mulligans anymore, like any of that stuff. I kind of just go with like if I'm like kind of tracking my score for real. I was like, I'm gonna play like a breakfast ball. So like first time I get on the tee box, immediately like flexing. It's like, let's go. I'm gonna crush the hell out of this ball. I swing, and it's a snap hook left that like maybe I can find. It's like, but it's like a bad first hole. I'm like, ugh. And I was like, I'm probably gonna get up there and be like, I can't find it. So I just like, I have a second ball in my pocket. I was like, I'll just hit the one more. I'll play my provisional. It'll be fine. Maybe I'll count it as a stroke. Maybe like it's first hole breakfast ball. It's kind of like the one, even my hard. We
need a breakfast ball on the podcast this morning.
Exactly. And like even my hardcore golf fans, like friends who I play with that take it super, super seriously, even they're down with a breakfast ball. So I take the second ball out of my pocket and I put it down. First comment Bree makes all day. Why are you hitting the second one? the rest of like the trip through 18, I give her credit. She was super cute about it, but like she was asking questions that like anyone who has played golf before is like, shut the hell up. So it's like the one is like, why were you hitting a second one? There was one comment where it was like, why did you go all the way to the left? There's so much room in front of you. I'm like, I hit one off to the right. So I'm like behind the trees. I got to punch through. She goes like, well, just put it right back on the fairway. I'm like, yeah, I want to put it right back on the fairway, but otherwise I got to go up an 80-foot tree or through 6 other ones. So it's not as easy. It's like easier said than done. Then the putting comes up. I like go to putt. Like I lip one out. She's like, ooh, you could have used that one. I was like, yeah, of course. It was like my father-in-law was like next to me just cracking up over it because it was like everything. Like, again, it was like, I wish I had it recorded because it was like everything that you would think like somebody would say golfing. Bree said golfing, and it was like it's like the first one, like the one that got him going was like when she goes like, why are you hitting another one? I'm like, because the first one was freaking shit. That's why I'm hitting another one, because the first one was freaking awful. She was cracking up. The highlight I think of her golf experience though was when somebody on another fairway hit a terrible shot, bounced off a tree, and the ball ricocheted through our cart. And I was out walking my ball. Bree was sitting in the cart, and all of a sudden, like I hear the like rattling of it, and she goes, "Oh my god!" And I go up, I was like, "What the hell happened?" She goes, "Well, this guy was next to me because he hit a bad shot." She goes, and I asked him, "Do you want me to move?" And he goes, "No, you're totally fine." And then he tried to punch out, hit a tree, came right back in. So we ended up seeing the guys. We were walking back to the clubhouse to return the carts. He goes, "Are you guys staying for a drink outside after?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're gonna get dinner and grab a drink." And the guy goes, "Your first few drinks are on me. I got you. I almost killed you. I'm so sorry. I swear I don't always do that." And Bree's like, "Do they usually do that?" I was like, "No, Bree, they don't usually hit you with golf balls." But yeah, it's kind of normal that they'll buy you a drink after if they do. I was like, "Well, you were kind of in for quite a treat there."
So
It was successful. I thought it was a successful outing.
All right,
was
well,
the score?
don't bury the lead. Yeah, what was the score? Don't bury the lead. You got
I
all
think
this
I finished with like a 92, 93. Like it was fine. Like we talked about this last year. I'd be like, I shot 92, 93. But like I've been shooting like mid to high 80s the last couple of times I've been out. I've been playing really well. And so it was a rough 92, 93. I recovered on the back. I shot like a 48 on the front. So I recovered really well on the back. It was just the front was pretty rough. But it's funny. Like I was joking with my my actual dad the other day. He was like, "Oh, how have you been shooting?" I was like, the way camp has been going, I was playing really, really well. So I stopped going to the driving range. I was like, I've got this damn golf game figured out. And it's kind of funny that after I stopped was when suddenly those scores started creeping right back up to where they were. So I need a couple of range days. But no, it was a successful outing there with Bree's first time golfing. I think she's going to go again. I think she had a good time. So next time we're going to go with her mom there, and we'll probably go out with Rodney and Corinne as well.
Got to get her on the course playing next time. That's the next step. Then you can heckle right back.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna have that ring thrown at my face if I start doing that. Start heckling her. Yeah. I know where I sleep at night. I'm not gonna screw around with that too much, man. I'd end up without a head.
All right, on to football. That's the sport we're talking about here on the Jets podcast. So I mentioned we're going to get into expectations a little bit. We'll look at the division as a whole and this roster, the way it broke down. But let's start with those expectations. We heard Joe Douglas off the top a little bit talking about, that this team is maybe, people aren't giving them respect, but there's a lot of good players. They're just not household names. It's a lot of, he's not coach, but coach speak type stuff. But realistically, when you look at the roster and how it breaks down against other teams in the NFL, Connor, if they're going to be competitive, if they're going to dream of the playoffs, they're going to have to play above their talent level. Is that a fair way of putting it? That they're going to have to play better than the roster shakes out as we look at it right now, if they're going to make a run at 9-7 or maybe even 8-8 does it because of the expanded playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you look at the Jets roster. I don't think anyone would sit here and say that this is one of the best teams in the NFL. Now, obviously, the big X factor in this entire equation, as is always going to be the X factor until we have a concrete evaluation of the type of player he is, which we should have after this season, is Sam Darnold. So if Sam Darnold is somehow, or I shouldn't say somehow, but if Sam Darnold develops this year or shows very early on in the season that he is a bona fide, no doubt, franchise quarterback, and that he is somebody that is, I mean, I think that Patrick Mahomes is in a tier above himself, but if he's in that top 10, top 12 quarterback range, you're suddenly talking about a guy that can just about single-handedly win you football games. And then he can overcome the lack of talent around him to make plays and will his team to a victory. If that's the case, if Sam Darnold is that bona fide stud, he is your franchise quarterback. He is the guy that, like we've constantly said, you need to figure out if he's going to be the reason you compete for a Super Bowl or if he's going to be a guy that needs some help getting to a Super Bowl. You need to figure out what kind of quarterback he is right now. If he is the former instead of the latter, you're talking about a completely different outlook on this season. Because suddenly, I mean, look at the talent that Aaron Rodgers used to have around him, right? I mean, there was no talent in Green Bay, and they were still winning 10, 11, 12 games every single year because of Aaron Rodgers. So if Sam Darnold somehow this year becomes that quarterback, well, the expectations for this season completely change. Now, if Sam Darnold is just kind of one of those guys still this year that's coming along, slowly developing, good but not great, a guy that shows he can be a starting quarterback but not, that's when the Jets are going to have to kind of like buckle up and play some games this year and win some games this year where they sneak out with victories. They win ugly. You know, they win those 24-17. They win the game because, you know, they hold the ball longer than the other team. It's not about number of plays run, but time of possession. They win the time of possession battle. They force a turnover or two, and that's how they get their win. I think that's the kind of game that more going into this season. I think that's how the Jets are going to be successful because they don't have a roster as talented as the Buffalo Bills. They don't have a roster as talented as the New England Patriots. That's two teams just in their division without taking into consideration the fact that they're not as talented as the Oakland Raiders, the Chiefs, probably even the Broncos. They're not as talented as the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens. There are all of these teams, the AFC South. I mean, they're probably more talented. Actually, no, the Colts, I think, were probably even a more talented team. The Texans are a more talented team. They're more talented than the Jaguars, but who isn't? So I think when you look across the NFL landscape, the Jets are, without a doubt, in the bottom third, probably bottom 10, maybe even bottom 5 teams in terms of overall roster talent, even if everything breaks their way with Mims developing, Rashad Perriman being a solid number 2. I mean, they're still going to be a team that is not one of the better in the NFL. That doesn't mean they can't win football games. I mean, every year you see teams make the playoffs where you're like, man, they just happen to come together. So if Sam Darnold, like I said, develops better than anticipated, I would say, you've got a guy that obviously changes the outlook on this season entirely, because if you have a quarterback in the NFL, you literally have everything. But if he kind of just starts to improve, or he looks like the quarterback we saw in training camp, the Jets are going to have to play ugly and fight ugly if they want to try to get some wins in this season and potentially make a playoff run. And even then, honestly, I think it might be a little unlikely, but we'll see.
Yeah, it would be interesting, just if it's interesting, right? If it's exciting down the stretch, if they're playing games that matter at the end of the season, that I think that would be enough for a lot of Jets fans to be competitive and in it. Unlike last year, where while they did play well down the stretch, because of the 1-7 start, it just didn't matter, and it was just kind of mailing it in down the end, even when the team was playing well. So when you think strengths and weaknesses, obviously that's a big unknown as Darnold. You would have thought the strength would have been the defense with CJ Mosley back and Jamal Adams and all of that stuff. It feels like even though those guys aren't here to play for this team in 2020, if the team is going to be competitive, the defense still needs to be a strength, which means no pressure, Greg Williams, but you're going to have to pull some stuff out of this one.
Yeah, it's odd, you know, and like on every NFL team, you can kind of go through and look at them and say, like, this is what they can hang their hat on. You know what I mean? Like, this is their identity, and this is what they're going to do well, and this is how they're going to win football games. I don't know, to be completely honest, if the Jets have that roster position or roster side of the ball, I should say, that is their strength. You know, I look at this roster and I say, like, okay, if the Jets had a really, really good offense, this defense is fine. Like, I think this defense can be better than what the Chiefs defense was last year if, you know, and the Chiefs won a Super Bowl, because I think that, like, the Chiefs defense was kind of like fine and it was maybe slightly above average. And I think that's what this Jets defense can be. I think they lack a true pass rusher, which is what the Chiefs have. I think they have, who is it, Frank Clark out there in Kansas City. So I think they have some good players. I mean, they have Tyrann Mathieu. Those are two players if the Jets still had Jamal Adams, they kind of have a similar defense there. But even with Marcus May, I think Marcus May at this point in his career is a similar player to what Tyrann Mathieu is, who looks like he's getting older quicker. But I think this is a Jets defense that if they had a very good offense, it's fine. You can win with them. I think that this Jets offense, if you had a dynamic, game-changing, top-tier defense, I think this is a Jets offense that would be fine. The issue is that the Jets, I don't believe, have either side of the ball that is the dynamic, game-changing, great group. So they kind of have two groups that are, if everything breaks their way, fine to slightly above average, but not really a side of the ball where you're like, that's our strength, that's our weakness. I mean, we ran on The Athletic today a position by position grading, basically. Now that everything's final, like the Jets have put their players in injured reserve, they've activated the guys off, they've got their practice squad, they've got their 53, they've got everything. We ran a position by position grade of the entire Jets roster: quarterback, running back, offensive line, defensive line, outside linebacker, inside linebacker, cornerback, safety. I think the highest grade that I gave to either side of the ball was a B+, and it was the tight end position. And I think the tight end position could potentially be an A by the end of the year if Chris Herndon stays healthy. But that's a big question mark because Chris Herndon, even in training camp, got nicked up towards the end. So it's a big thing for him to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, I think the Jets are fine. A, because they've got that top tier their number one tight end in Chris Herndon, but the depth behind him is also pretty impressive. Ryan Griffin caught 5 touchdowns in Herndon's absence last year, also has good chemistry with Sam Darnold. Daniel Brown is a good receiving tight end. Trevon Wesco made legitimate strides in summer this year and was one of the early camp stars. So the tight end position's a B+. Every other roster spot, I don't think I gave higher than a B when you look at both the starter and then the situation that happens if somebody contracts COVID or somebody goes down with an injury. That isn't a great sign. I mean, you go through any other team, you can be like, oh, this is an A. This is an A. They at least have like 2 positions, 3 positions where you're like, this is an A. I don't see any other position on the Jets roster that's an A. Quarterback, even if Sam Darnold's rocking and rolling, he's probably a B. Running back, probably a B+. I think that might have been the other one I gave a B+. Running back's good. Offensive line, C+, B. Defensive line, B. There's no real game changer there. Outside linebacker, same thing. No real game changer. Inside linebacker, competent, definitely, with Neville Hewitt and Blake Cashman, but it's definitely not an A when you don't have CJ Mosley there anymore. Cornerbacks, best case scenario, a B if everyone stays healthy. Safety, Marcus May's a stud, but Bradley McDougall, probably still a B. All of this stuff is kind of indicative of the fact that this team is still developing. This team is still building. This team is still growing. And now I know that's tough for Jet fans to hear because they feel like they've been building, growing, and developing probably. I mean, well, look, I like I said, and people know this, I'm not a Jets fan. I didn't grow up a Jets fan. My knowledge of Jets history is not very good just because I don't have the ability to be like, oh, yeah, I remember when I was a kid watching this game and this happened. You know what I mean? Like I can't just grab and pull that information. So my knowledge of the team really goes back to when I joined the beat in 2014. This team has been rebuilding in 2014, in 2015, in 2017, in 2018, in 2019, and now 2020. The only year that they were not rebuilding was 2016, and that was the year when they just had this massive combustion of players hating each other with Brandon Marshall and Sheldon Richardson and Darrelle Revis giving in and all this stuff. So it's tough. If you're a Jet fan, I feel for you because you really have been rebuilding and just hoping for the brighter tomorrow for the last 6 seasons. But I think the one thing you can probably hang your hat on now is that you have a guy running the show in Joe Douglas that seems to be somebody that has not only captivated this entire franchise, but this franchise is wholeheartedly convinced that this is going to be the right guy to turn this team around and build this team around. And I think this is a step in the right direction, but the Jets are still probably 1 or 2 years away.
So if you're rebuilding, it's the NFL. There's still things that as a fan, you need to be able to, I guess, embrace if you're going to get something out of this NFL season, especially when you're going to certainly be doing it from home without fans and all that sort of thing. So in a rebuilding year, you look at this team, and I think there are still things that fans can kind of put their hat on, and that is number one, right, would be Sam Darnold, and just seeing that progression and seeing the steps that he takes. And then the other young guys, Mims, see how he comes along. I mean, the key to enjoying a team when they're rebuilding is the team has to be in the games, right? I think that's the number one thing. You can't get blown out week after week. The team has to be in football games so that you can sit down on Sunday afternoon and think, you know what? If we play well, we have a chance of winning this game, regardless of who we're playing against. Even though over the course of the season, we're maybe not going to win more than 7 games. But that said, you know, what else stands out to you as what people should be locked in on if things don't get off to the good start that the Jets fans hope they will?
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone, even the most optimistic Jet fan, even the guy that is just going to sleep in his green and white PJs and drinking coffee out of his Jets mug and has got the New England Patriots toilet paper in the bathroom. I mean, I think even that Jet fan does not expect a deep playoff or Super Bowl run this year. I don't think that even the most optimistic Jet fan looks at this roster and is like, damn, man, this is it. Like put up the number one. Let's get Joe Namath back to guarantee it. Like I don't even think that guy's got that in him. But I think that when they look at this roster, the biggest thing that this Jets team can give fans, like the thing that just gives them hope and gives them optimism, what they want to see, is a team that is competing week in and week out. And it is just a team that, kind of like you alluded to, Tim, they are in this and in every game from start to finish. No more blowouts. No more like the first Dolphin game where it's really not even that close, or no more like the Bengals game where it's really not that close, or where they're not getting outplayed considerably. I mean, look, I think it's going to be a very hard thing for this Jets team to stay within 2 touchdowns of the Kansas City Chiefs or San Francisco 49ers. I think that's going to be very hard for this team to do. But every other game on this schedule, when they're playing the Buffalo Bills, be in it until the end. When they are playing the Miami Dolphins, a team they're better than, beat that team. When they are playing the San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, at least give them a run for their money, similar to what they kind of did against the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night when they were so undermanned. At least put an effort and fight and be in these games and keep it competitive. And if that means that you've still finished with 7 wins, if that means you still finished with 8 wins, I think that's a feather in your cap, because you can look at this team and say, like, they're turning that corner. I think last year, if the Jets didn't start last season 1-7, I think it would have been such a different outlook on this season if they had finished, like, say, or that they had started the season, 3-6 even, and then finished 4-3. I think you would have had a different outlook, because you would have been like, you know what, they were in it every single year. That 1-7 start, which, again, they lost their starting quarterback. We're playing Luke Falk and David Fales. Like, I mean, obviously they're going to suck. But, I mean, the fact that they had started 1-7 with a head coach that a lot of this fan base didn't even wanted, and then turned it on at the end, I think it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But if they start and they're at least competing throughout and they can steal some games, they can win ugly and just win games, I think that'll give a lot of this fan base hope that, you know what, we now can see the nucleus of this team starting to grow, where in terms of, like, it's a team, like chemistry. It's such a football cliche, but you have chemistry, you have team chemistry here. And then we're starting to fight. And now, if we get some more talent, if we, now that we have this money in free agency, because, Joe Douglas was cheap, if we have this money in free agency now, we can fill out the roster with some more talent. We've got the guy that actually knows how to evaluate college talent. We can get everything rocking and rolling for us, and we can make a run next year. Like, now we've got it. We've got the nucleus. We've got the core. We infuse it with future talent in the draft, and then some nice free agent signings that complement the players we already have, and we're going to be ready to go. Like, we are going to be ready to go. We're going to be ready to rock and roll. I think that'll give fans a legitimate hope for next year, and really get them not just hearing we're heading in the right direction, not just thinking we're heading in the right direction, but actually seeing, like, legitimate visual proof that this thing is working. And then it's also the things kind of like you mentioned, Tim, Sam Darnold taking that next step, becoming the bona fide, no doubt franchise quarterback, Chris Herndon stepping up and kind of ascending into that top 5 tight end class. I've said it before. I don't think he's Travis Kelce. I don't think he's George Kittle. I don't think he's Rob Gronkowski, but put himself in that Greg Olsen class, or Greg, not current, 90-year-old Greg Olsen, but the Greg Olsen that when he was in his prime with the Panthers, like, be that player, be that kind of Greg Olsen, that guy, like, be that guy for the Jets offense. You can really have a successful scheme with him leading your front. Seeing Denzel Mims get healthy and then step up and show that maybe he's not a number 1. I don't know if Denzel Mims is going to be a number 1 wideout, but that he can be a long-term number 2, the Roddy White to Julio Jones, something like that, be that kind of a player. I think that would give Jet fans a lot of, like, we got this, Joe Douglas has got this. We're heading in the right direction. Watch out, because if Sam shows he's the franchise quarterback, Chris Herndon becomes Greg Olsen, Denzel Mims really steps up as a number 2. You've got a core nucleus on offense, and then on defense, you've got some things you can work with. I don't see, like, on defense, that same core nucleus, aside from Quinnen Williams really finally showing he's like a legitimate game-wrecking presence. I don't see anyone else on the defense where you're like, that guy is going to be a stud. But with a defensive coordinator like Greg Williams, he'll make it work with whoever you get. And then after Joe Douglas fixes the offense, he can turn his attention to defense, which is significantly easier to fix than an offense.
Yeah, certainly a lot of things to stay focused on. Well, fantasy football draft season is upon us. Due to quarantine, it's very possible that you might have Zeke's haircut in your pants. That's why our partners at Manscaped have partnered with us to make sure you don't gamble on shaving the same way you like to gamble on football. When it comes to men's hygiene, Manscaped is as good and safe as Christian McCaffrey in a PPR league. The Lawnmower 3.0 is the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of their ceramic blade and skin-safe technology, your nicks and snags will be reduced. This is the perfect protection needed for your franchise quarterback. The Lawnmower 3.0 is also waterproof and has an LED light on it. Game changer. Their Perfect Package 3.0 comes with the new and improved Lawnmower Performance Boxer briefs and a travel bag for you to use when you're done quarantine, and some other liquid formulations also, like the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver. The Crop Preserver is anti-chafing deodorant. Crop Reviver is a spray-on toner and is made with soothing aloe and witch hazel extracts. For a limited time, subscribers get not one, but 2 free gifts. The Shed Travel Bag, that's a $39 value, and the patented high-performance anti-chafing Manscaped Boxer Briefs. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code TheAthletic20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code TheAthletic20. It's time to boost your hygiene with the absolute besties with Manscaped.
All right, Connor, now it's time to celebrate. That's right, football is here. To kick off football's 101st season, DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is giving all users a no-brainer to start the season. If you haven't tried DraftKings Sportsbook yet, head over to the App Store now because you don't want to miss this. Have you ever heard of a football team losing by 100 points? Well, for week 1, DraftKings is ensuring that if Kansas City were to lose in historic fashion, you would still cash your bet. That's right, DraftKings Sportsbook has moved the spread to Kansas City plus 101 points for all users. So even if Kansas City loses by 100 points, you still win big with DraftKings Sportsbook. That's a no-brainer. Plus, DraftKings is giving away up to $100 million in prizes for all users who entered their football survivor pool. All you have to do is sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook, enter their survivor pool, and you'll instantly get a share of up to $100 million in giveaways. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code QUICK to take advantage of this no-brainer of an offer. That's the promo code QUICK to get in on all the action. For limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey only. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, let's talk about the roster a little bit as we move things along. And no huge surprises as far as cuts and how it shook down, but I want to talk about the quarterback situation. And before that, just some of the interesting cuts, right? Jonathan Harrison, a little bit of a surprise. James Burgess, Nate Hairston. Connor, overall, when you think of roster cuts years past and this, it seemed like for the most part, the Jets did what people expected.
Yeah. Before we get to that, real quick, I just want to give an angry shout out that we only have, it looks like browsing this YouTube page at the moment, we only have one Michael Dunn in the chat. Michael Dunn
It's
1A.
early.
We are missing Michael Dunn 1B, which is a
Or
very
1C.
sad development.
We don't even know how many there are.
Yeah, that's right. We do need to find more Michael Dunn 1Cs. We got to, I'll be honest, like ever since we started doing this YouTube thing, like it's been kind of cool. Cause like when I write stories or stuff like that, and even being on Twitter for, probably the majority of my time covering the Jets, like you find the people that are regularly in your mentions, you know what I mean? Like the loyal listeners of the show or the loyal readers. And you kind of like, you can see them. You're like, oh, they're there. What's kind of cool is like this little like community that's kind of building and growing here on this year web chat. Like I thought, honestly, starting the show at this early, I was like, man, the chat's probably going to be pretty low. We're not going to have that many viewers. I mean, the numbers are actually pretty decent considering this is like, we're doing this like 8:30 and seeing some of the names in here. It's like, man, they got up early with us. Like, that's kind of cool. Like Michael Dunn 1A, who's been here since literally day one. He was like, holy cow, there's 2 Michael Dunns in here. Is sitting here going back and forth with our viewers down here and whatever. So if we ever do one of those, I know back when the Athletic first was forming, we did those meet and greets in Manhattan. I don't even think either of you were hired yet. I don't think so. No, neither of you were around yet.
Nope.
We didn't have podcasts yet. We did like a meet and greet in Manhattan, and we invited all the subscribers, and there was like a Q&A panel, chances for us to meet like some of the subscribers. I know that if we have one of them again, we're gonna get Michael Dunn's gonna be the first one on the door. We're gonna get Michael Dunn 1A is gonna be the first one on the door. But yeah, back to I just find like
back to the.
Here.
We're on a time crunch today, Connor.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, no, time crunch is never good with me, man. I ramble.
And you were late. Let's just get that out there for all the people that think I'm the one that's late.
Oh, I'll be honest. Marissa is the first one in here every time. It's Marissa and Tim are never late. I think there's been one show where Tim, like you said, because when you can view the boxes on YouTube, the one in the bottom is always the last one to log on, right? Is that what you said? That's why I'm always on the bottom. Like that's why I'm always. And there was
today
one
Tim's
time
only
where
on the bottom because his internet disconnected.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only reason. Like Tim was here early, and I set my alarm at 7:40. I still didn't get out of bed till 7:50. Then I had to make coffee.
And we were supposed to start at 8, but okay, let's continue on. Surprise cuts, roster reaction.
Yeah, honestly, like there was none. It's not too surprising that there were no surprising roster cuts, just because I didn't look at this roster specifically this year and think that there were too many studs that were like on the bubble. Like especially once CJ Mosley opted out, that pretty much saved Avery Williamson. Like Avery Williamson was probably going to be one of those guys that was going to be cut. And actually, when you saw him agree to a restructured contract, was basically a cap cut. Like it was a salary cut. When you saw him agree to that, it kind of told you that like normally when that happens, it's because the team goes to the player and be like, look, you can either accept this pay cut or we're going to cut you. And Avery was like, okay, I'll accept the pay cut, that kind of thing. So he, I think, would have been a big surprise theoretically. But other than that, there weren't any players on here. Literally, there weren't any players on the Jets roster that were really going to be huge surprises on the roster bubble. Joe Flacco wasn't getting cut. Rashad Perryman wasn't getting cut. Jamison Crowder wasn't getting cut. Desir Poole, they weren't getting cut. I mean, it became pretty clear early on, like that most of the Jets roster cuts were going to be guys you expected, which probably, points to the state of the roster. But the Harrison one was a little bit of a shocker just because of his relationship with Sam Darnold and also his versatility, that he can play either guard position and center, has starting experience. And for the Jets to go with Andrews over him, I thought that was quite a bit of a surprise. I thought that was actually a really big surprise. I think most people on the beat viewed Harrison as a roster lock. And James Burgess was more just, the Jets have more talent there. Patrick Wuznar is more talented than James Burgess. Blake Cashman more talented than him. Avery Williamson, Avery Williamson, Blake Cashman, Neville Hewitt, all of these guys are more talented. The Jets don't need to keep 6 inside linebackers. You need 4 at the most. So if you're keeping Williamson and Hewitt, and then you have Uznar on the IR or whatever, you're set. And I think that Harvey Lange's probably the guy that ends up getting let go once Patrick's able to come off the IR. So, I mean, that was a minor surprise. Harrison was probably the bigger one, but I think that the more of the surprise for me, honestly, throughout this signing and camp and all that fun stuff was more the fact that the Jets didn't make any waiver claims. And I thought for sure they would come in with 3 or 4, where they would have been after, Philly let go of Sharif Miller and Rasul Douglas. I thought both of those guys were going to be Joe Douglas targets because they were 2 guys he helped draft in Philadelphia and would have filled needs. But the fact that the Jets stayed off it surprised me. And when we got a chance to talk to Joe Douglas on Monday, he kind of explained it, that because there were no preseason games, that's how these guys and these pro personnel departments find players, that they go through every single rep of every single preseason game from every single team. And they watch every single player and they say, like, we like these 10 guys. We think they're really good. And then they start making calls on all 10 of these guys. And then when those 10 guys, say maybe 7 of them get cut, they make additional calls to be like, okay, why did this guy get let go? Was it a numbers game? Is there an underlying medical issue we don't know about? What's the deal? And then they say, okay, let's put a waiver claim in because he can make it. But the vast majority of those waiver claims are determined through preseason tape. Because there were no preseason games this year, teams basically had to make calculated decisions on who to claim off the waiver wire by watching their college tape and by watching 2019 NFL game tape if they happen to get into NFL games, or 2019 preseason tape. That's a big gamble to say, like, I'm going to take a guy that I know exactly who he is and cut him from my roster in a season of uncertainty to bring in a guy that I technically have not seen any film of since 2019. And clearly his team didn't believe he could make the 53. Like that's a big, big gamble. So after Joe Douglas explained it that way, and there were a couple players the Jets were targeting, I think they just didn't end up, they weren't awarded them. So it wasn't like they were just completely sitting out. There were a couple players they were targeting or considered targeting, but they just weren't able to get them. I think that is something that was surprising to me until Joe Douglas explained it. That was the one that kind of took me back and then explained it. But as far as cuts, like not really surprising. Honestly, that was kind of like the one thing I wrote about in that story today is that this was a very uneventful weekend, both from the guys the Jets cut on Friday, Saturday, and then the non-claiming, and then doing what they did with the IR and elevating who they elevated. Like it was very uneventful. Even like I remember I actually called my editor, Chris Strauss, and I was like, hey, just so you know, so for the weekend, no, it's a holiday. So what I'm going to do is whoever the Jets claim off the waiver wire, I'm going to do a kind of a pull-out story on this is who the Jets claim, this is the background on them. This is who the Jets claim, this is the background. I'm doing a big like kind of mini scouting report on who these players are, what you need to know about them. I was like, and then I'll do a 53-man roster breakdown, which is what we ended up running today. Waiver claim, and I kind of messaged Chris. I was like, yeah, no point in doing that story. I was like, so it was honestly, it was a very uneventful weekend. And I think it just kind of points more towards the time than anything else.
The other odd thing, though, was the quarterback situation, just because they end up with 5 by the juggling of it. Obviously, Sam Darnold's your starter and Joe Flacco's eventually your backup, but that's where the problem kind of created itself because Joe Flacco's not going to be ready to go the first couple of weeks. Then you have James Morgan, who you drafted in the 4th round, so you can't let him go through waivers. He's going to get claimed. So they end up in this situation where they need somebody. So Fales and White both end up on the practice squad. So I guess that's the one question is why both, Connor? Because Fales is, he's the 29-year-old. He's been with Gase from stop to stop to stop. He knows the offense. We've been through that. He's also not a very good quarterback. We learned that last year. And then you have Mike White, who's a little bit younger, impressed during camp, seems to have a handle. So I would have thought they would have said, you know what? It's the practice squad. Let's grab one of these guys. We'll continue to juggle. One of them is going to end up being the backup for week 1. They go with 2. Is that basically to let the competition continue here throughout the week, or why did they do it that way?
Gase made a pretty good joke when we talked to him on Monday, where he said, "Hey, Joe Douglas likes offensive linemen. I like quarterbacks. We have to compromise somewhere." So, no, I think that David Fales line got me. I didn't see that one coming. I didn't see that one caught me off guard. Very little does, but that caught me off guard. No, I think this is just like it just states to the time. So like Joe Flacco is on the 53, but you got to cancel him out because he can't play for a few weeks. James Morgan, like you said, they can't make him susceptible to the practice or the waiver wire because somebody would claim him. He was a rookie 4th round pick, was a quarterback. People definitely had other, like that's somebody who just got scouted. Somebody would pick him up and claim him and be happy to have him on the roster. It was the other guys, the 2 they kind of had to pick. But it's also like, imagine the Jets have those 2 guys in their practice squad. They now have the ability to elevate one on game day. So they will elevate one as part of the now 55-man roster, is that one of those guys in the practice squad, one of those quarterbacks will be elevated from the practice squad and be Sam Darnold's backup. The reason they're going in with both Fales and White is that what happens if something happens to one of them? So say like White gets COVID. Suddenly you are now like, holy crap, we're going into the week 1 with James Morgan as the backup. Like that can't happen. Same with the reverse of that. What if White gets COVID? Now, or like, what if White gets COVID? Now you have no, like now, okay, now you're going with Fail, or like, you know what I mean? Like you need to have an emergency quarterback. So you need to have the guy that is, this guy's going to be our backup. This guy's are technically, I know the Jets aren't technically quarantining him in terms of like, okay, like what the Eagles are doing with Josh McCown, where it's like, you go stay out in Texas. And if all hell breaks loose, you're going to come join us in Philly. You already know the offense. The Jets aren't going to that extreme, but they are keeping the extra one there. So if something happens to one, they know they have the other one. If something happens to this guy, they know they have the other guy. So it's that's why they ended up doing it. And I think it makes a lot of sense. The fact that you have those extra practice squad spots makes it possible. And also the fact that you have that ability to elevate one on game day and then put him back in the practice squad helps a lot too. So it's more just a sign of the times. And then honestly, once Flacco gets healthy, it wouldn't surprise me to see if the Jets are like, okay, we can let one of these guys go, because Joe Flacco will be the backup, and it'll be Joe Flacco and James Morgan at number 2 and number 3. And then you just have one quarantine quarterback on the back. But it's because Flacco's hurt and can't play for a few weeks. And one of those 2 practice squad guys is going to end up being your backup for Darnold. it just gives you some flexibility. And the two, I mean, look, White had a better camp than David Fales. Fales knows the offense a little bit better because he's been with Gase at multiple stops. So it's just kind of somebody that, I mean, we've said this multiple times. If either of those guys has to play a meaningful regular season game and be asked to do anything more than just hand the ball off and milk the clock, the Jets are more than screwed. Like, they are not winning a game with Mike White or David Fales. That's not happening. You want a freezing cold take me on that and send that audio over? Go ahead. Like, because that ain't happening. They're not winning a game with either of those two guys under center. So they've got to get them at least, like, they just need to have, I mean, they're screwed either way, but they need to have somebody at least where they're like, okay, we're confident in him just coming in, dinking and dunking and handing the ball off for 6 or 7 minutes to ice a victory.
All right, last episode, we went all in on the cheap discussion. Connor, you went on a bit of a rant about the team and how it's the way they're building. They're being smart. It's not cheap. Since then, JaDeveon Clowney signed what ended up being kind of a discount deal this week. Logan Ryan signs with the Giants. The Jets not involved in either of those either. And then Joe Douglas, when he spoke this week, actually referenced the cheapness, and I put that in quotes as well. So just, sum it up for us again, I guess, as far as Joe Douglas's thoughts on what we've already kind of discussed on this podcast.
Yeah, let's go. Let's set the timer again. Maybe I can go on another.
Well, we don't have much time here, so let's trim it down.
He called him what? He called him internet. He called those internet reports, which is like quite
internet
a slap
reports.
in the face. Like that is a shot. Like, even from anyone in the field to have that reference that way, that is a shot. Like, Joe Douglas. Whew. But no, Joe Douglas just confirmed exactly what we said on the podcast a couple days before he spoke, and almost used exactly the same vernaculars as we did, which was that he had absolutely no cap restrictions from ownership. He was not told, you are on a tight budget, you can only spend this much money. He confirmed that he has been given full control to do literally whatever he wants to do with this roster. Christopher Johnson wants to know what's going to happen because it's his team. So he wants to know that if Joe Douglas is going to cut Sam Darnold, Christopher Johnson expects a phone call like, hey, this is what we're going to do. But there is no pushback, no, what are you doing? No, go get this guy from Christopher Johnson. He wants to be informed. He's involved in all of the decisions, but it is Joe Douglas's call. It is whatever Joe Douglas wants to do, he can do. And Douglas said, if I wanted to go out there and give somebody a $100 million contract, I had the ability to go out and give somebody a $100 million contract. I didn't see the point in doing this year because of A, the uncertainty of 2020, which he confirmed. He confirmed what we said. And he said, B, with an eye on the future, which he confirmed what he said, which is that the 2020 free agent class is going to be significantly better than what the 2019 free agent class was. That's a fact. That's what's going to happen. The players are going to be available this year are better than who were available last year. So we wanted to make a run at them. Regarding JaDeveon Clowney, I just don't think the Jets really saw him as a fit. He's not a Joe Douglas guy. Like, I think we've said this multiple times, that he is not somebody that cares about losing more than he hates, or hates losing more than he loves winning. Like, he's not that kind of guy. He's somebody who was in a contract year and still took plays off. Like, that's not who Joe Douglas wants in this locker room when he's trying to build players who he wants to be Jets. It's just, it didn't make sense. Logan Ryan is a safety. The Giants need a safety. The Jets don't need a safety. They have Marcus May. They have Marcus May at one safety position. They have Bradley McDougald at another safety position. They have Ashton Davis as their flex third. They don't need a fourth safety that they're going to have to pay $7.5 million to. So did they talk to Logan Ryan? Yes, but the signing didn't make sense for the money. Like, he would have been good as a backup corner and flex safety at like $4 million a year. He got 7.5 from the Giants. So that's why they weren't involved in there. And with the Yannick trade, it just didn't make sense to give up draft compensation for a player that you could potentially lose in free agency unless you got a franchise tag him. And then all that cap you've spent time building in the worst case scenario is thrown out the window. So I think that Douglas, just the fact he stayed out of the bidding for those three, I know they're big names, but it just makes sense. And when you look at it and you break it down, you understand why the Jets weren't heavily involved in any of the three, and it makes a lot of sense, and they're going to be better off for it.
Yeah, totally makes a lot of sense. And you got to, there has to be some patience there, that the team's being built right and not just being thrown together here by spending money. And hopefully that pays off in the long run. And we'll find out in the long run for sure with Joe Douglas. All right, that's going to do it for this edition. We appreciate all the comments in the chat, and Connor said it during the episode, but we love that there's a bit of a community growing there. It's good stuff. We'll be back later in the week. We'll talk about the Bills game, and we'll break down the whole division then as well. So we'll get into the other two teams. We'll talk a little bit about the Patriots and Dolphins and how the Jets stack up within all of that. If you have a friend or if you need a subscription to The Athletic, go to theathletic.com/the Can't Wait podcast. You can save 40% off a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. Also subscribe and give us a rating if you're checking us out on Apple or Spotify or even on here on YouTube. So do that as well. Follow Connor on Twitter, Connor_J_Hughes. I'm at Tim M. McMaster. Marissa is at Marissa_Morris. That's going to do it for another edition of the Can't Wait podcast.